everyone. We would like to officially welcome you to the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin County's 8th Annual Founders Luncheon. I'm Holly Davis, anchor for WPTV News Channel 5, and I'm honored to be your MC again this year. While we are all obviously more than happy to put 2020 in the rearview mirror, today's virtual program really serves as a reminder that we are better together, and it illustrates the impact you all have on our community, fund holders, board members, nonprofit organizations. You all play a vital part, and that's why this year we're going to be awarding our first ever Community Champion Award, and you don't want to miss it. Our expert panel of community leaders will discuss equity, diversity, and capacity building in our community. The roundtable discussion will be moderated by Eric Kelly, president of the Quantum Foundation. The college experience, it has been disrupted by the pandemic, but students, they're making the best of their new normal. And so we're going to be checking in with a few scholarship recipients. Plus, you are also minutes away from meeting the foundation's new president and CEO, Danita Nias. But before she shares her vision for the future, let's take a look back at how far we've come in a year that has really caught us off guard.
At the beginning of the 2019-2020 fiscal year, we never could have imagined what the year had in store for us. An unprecedented pandemic, nationwide unrest, and an unsure future. When COVID-19 thrust us into a new normal, Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin Counties stepped up, distributing funds to help our heroes on the front lines and reminding Floridians that they too can be heroes by masking up, washing their hands, and social distancing. When the nation rose up to demand change, Community Foundation became an ally, recognizing the need for racial equity and understanding that a diverse team can better address the needs of an increasingly more inclusive community. We continued our mission to give where we live, to grant more than $1 million in scholarships, and to make a big impact with many grants. And we've only just begun. There's so much more that we can do to amplify our combined efforts and resources. The best is yet to come. Community Foundation. The power of community.
Yes, it is a new day at your Community Foundation under new leadership. Our next speaker is a dedicated and passionate philanthropist known for making good trouble, who brings a unique and valuable perspective to the organization. Please extend a warm virtual welcome to the Foundation's newly elected chair of the board, Julie Fisher-Cummings. Julie?
Thank you, Holly. We are so lucky to have Holly as the host of our annual Founders Day for the second year in a row. We are here to celebrate the extraordinary ways all of you are helping to change the lives of so many in need. Let me begin by sharing what keeps me going, a grateful heart. I'd like to thank the dedicated members of our Founders Luncheon Committee. You have made this more than just an event that started 8 years ago. Today's celebration is now an important tradition that brings us together across counties. And through this virtual event, we can reach even more people and even connect from where you are. For over 50 years, 4 generations of my family have been blessed to call this community home. In fact, my mother served on the original board of the Community Foundation. Her lifelong example and that of my father taught me a simple and enduring lesson: to help the world, first help at home. To the generous donors and holders of funds at the foundation, I want to express my sincere gratitude for your contributions to our community. You are helping us to give more, to give better, and to give together at a time when the community urgently needs your help. To our nonprofit and social impact partners, we applaud your ability to pivot during these difficult times, and your perseverance and passion continue to create lasting impact. The twin pandemics of COVID-19 and systemic racism have tested us as a nation and a community. But through these challenges, we stand steadfast in our commitment to break barriers and to make equity a cornerstone of everything we do. The COVID-19 Response Fund Committee, led by our staff and board member Jeff Stoops, have guided us in making meaningful grants to respond to the pandemic. A special thanks to Meredith Trim and Jim Robo for their additional gift, which brings the total funding for the Community Foundation's COVID-19 Response Fund to over $4 million. We look forward to continuing to serve the community through this fund as needs arrive. The foundation is currently working in partnership with a consortium of 20 other funders to make sure we meet our community's pressing needs. We are deeply appreciative of their collaboration, and together we can amplify our work in the community. Next year will mark the 50th anniversary of your and our community foundation. To prepare for that historic celebration, we have special news to announce today. After an extensive nationwide search, we have found a local leader who brings a wealth of experience, expertise, and most of all, passion for serving everyone in our community. I am thrilled to introduce to you someone who will lead us into the future to create a truly caring, equitable, and just community for all. Please join me in welcoming our new president and CEO, Danita Nias.
Thank you very much, Julie, for that kind introduction. Your passion for serving our entire community is truly inspiring, and we are fortunate to have you serve as our board chair. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of your community foundation, I would like to welcome everyone to our annual Founders Luncheon. We are gathered together today to honor and celebrate all of you and your contributions that make our communities more vibrant, inclusive, and equitable. I stand here humbled and in awe of how well this community foundation, as a collective unit, a team, responded to the overwhelming challenges and needs that resulted from the pandemic. Philanthropy through this community foundation made an impact. This is an extremely exciting period in the history of our community foundation, and I look forward and embrace the opportunity to expand our reach by partnering with our community stakeholders, nonprofits, donors, and staff. And what resonates with me most about partnering with all of you is that our causes span the spectrum of needs that exist in our community. Addressing these needs is our moral obligation and our responsibility to the communities we serve. Attracting individuals and foundations to support our community's philanthropic causes is the source of my energy and inspiration, and I am thrilled to partner with the board to develop the next phase of our direction and the strategic plan that will guide our efforts in the short and long term. And I am ready to get to work.
Remember me, it's Sophia. I reminded you to mask up, Florida. Please make sure you cover your nose and your mouth. Well, guess what? I get to announce an award, the Community Champion. I'm so excited. It's the first one ever. Who will it be? You have to stay tuned to find out.
Did you know your community foundation is one of the largest providers of scholarships in the region? Since 1983, together with donors, your community foundation has invested more than $15 million in promising students through scholarships. This includes more than $1 million for scholarships to local students last year. So much has changed, especially for students trying to navigate the pandemic and classes, but what would they rather be doing? We checked in with some of our local scholarship recipients.
I'd rather have 8 a.m. classes.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
I would rather have 8 a.m. classes.
I have the full day ahead of me.
Sooner rather than later.
I can have the rest of the afternoon off.
I'd rather not have a laptop again.
It would be my laptop.
I would never have a smartphone again. The internet is very important, but social media on like a phone, I don't think you can live without it, basically.
I think never have a laptop again, because I like using Snapchat a lot.
I suppose I'd rather have the worst professor once.
The worst professor ever just once.
The worst professor, one time.
The amount of good professors I've had makes me realize that I would never want an average professor.
Oh, that's very interesting.
I can't do the smelly thing.
I cannot deal with bad smells for long, extended periods of time.
I'd rather have a constantly messy dorm room, even though I am a pretty well-organized person.
I would rather have a constantly smelly dorm room. I feel like if it's too cluttered, then your mind thinks it's too cluttered too. Like it doesn't do any good for like your mental health.
Psychiatric nursing, there's so many different needs in that area of healthcare, and it just made me more passionate about pursuing careers in areas that really need our help.
What excites me the most about theater design is how involved I am behind the scenes of the studio set.
What excites me more is probably that I get to help people. I feel like the more I learn about different theories, the more I'm able to understand people and understand how they work.
I will be able to speak to many different groups of people, walks of life, religion, race, no matter what, and that I'll be able to make a difference.
We've also begun seeing like long-term effects of COVID, and a lot of it is mental side effects like depression or anxiety. So I know that in the future I really want to get down and help those types of people in the community.
After graduation, I'll be making a big difference in the world.
And now it's time to turn your attention to our roundtable discussion, Building Pathways to Prosperity and Equity. I'll turn things over to your panel moderator, Eric Kelly, president of Quantum Foundation.
Thanks, Holly, and thank you for joining me. Equity, equality, and prosperity. I have found that there are several misunderstandings, especially in philanthropy, surrounding the definition of these terms. Let's define these. Equity we'll define as fair, just, and it involves trying to understand and give people proportionately what they need to enjoy full, healthy lives. In contrast, equality aims to ensure that everyone gets the same things to enjoy full and healthy lives. Let's talk prosperity. We'll say it's relative to one's philosophy on life. Many will use economics as an indicator, but there are many other primary indicators for prosperity. Today's experts will help us frame the topics around equity, equality, and prosperity. Please help me welcome our all-star lineup. First, Palm Beach State College President, Ava Parker. We'll also be joined by Suzanne Cabrera, the President and CEO of the Housing Leadership Council of Palm Beach County. Also, Mayor Steve B. Wilson of the City of Belgrade. Fabiola Brumley, Market President at Bank of America. Daryl Houston, Senior Community Impact Officer at the Community Foundation. Let's begin with Ava. Ava, we applaud you for your work to enhance education achievement and positive life outcomes, and particularly for young people of color. Let me ask you a series of questions. First of all, Ava, what is educational equity, and why does it matter?
You know, Eric, let me start by saying thank you to the Community Foundation for leading this very serious and important conversation. Certainly, it's a statement about their commitment to equity in our community just by bringing us all together. You know, when I think about equity and I think about education, I think that it's a conversation about understanding your audience. And for us, that means really understanding our students. And it's a question about providing or having a commitment to deliver academic opportunities in a manner that best ensure the success of those students. So the goal is for all students to graduate or to achieve whatever credential they're looking to achieve at Palm Beach State. It's our responsibility to understand that student and ensure that we're delivering the information to them to ensure that success. And when data shows that there's discrepancy in how students are retaining and graduating, then we have to watch that and understand that we're not doing something right if we're not leading to the success of all students pretty much retaining and graduating at the same pace.
Secondly, tell us about the role of equity in Palm Beach State College's rapid credentialing program.
Eric, let me first by giving this a short synopsis on what the Rapid Credentialing Program is. It is the college's commitment to help our community retool. That is, rapid credentialing is just as it suggests. These are programs that are less than 1 year, that are available to all of our students, that really gives them an opportunity to change a career or to build upon certain skills so that they can be successful in the workforce. Think about programs like engineering, transportation, public safety, health sciences. These are all programs that we have different specialties in to provide opportunities for our students. You find equity in something like that whenever you're very mindful about how it is you ensure that students are aware of the opportunities. So first we have to make sure that everyone knows that it's available. And then also it's in how we deliver the information. Again, how is it that we're going to ensure that that audience that we're looking to protect or that student that we're looking to help change their career will actually be able to prosper and gain the information to ensure that they can go into another career once they complete the credential.
What are the challenges facing educators today, and how is Palm Beach State College preparing its faculty to teach the future generations of students?
You know, what I'd say to you, Eric, is that if you go back to 2019, and I would engage in conversations with employers, and I'd ask them, what is it that we can do to better prepare our graduates, for their careers in your industry? And so many of them talked about the idea that students lack soft skills. That is, that they seem to get the technical parts of the job right, but they didn't know how to work in teams or didn't really know how to interact with customers or clients. And so we really focused on ensuring that we would take care of the whole student and provide them with the academic experience as well as with the social experience so they could be successful once they moved on to their careers. And so now I'd say if you consider 2020 and now 2021 as we deal with the pandemic and so many folks are having to learn remotely, you're missing that opportunity to actually provide social interaction and address the skills that are traditionally included when you think of soft skills. So what I'd say to you is that the academicians and faculty are really forced with this responsibility of how is it that we can use technology to meet the full demands of students. And then on top of that, how is it that we understand and meet the needs of students because they now have different ideas about how they should learn. So one thing that we've done and one thing that we're preparing to ensure that our students are ready is that we're actually going to start providing more choices to our students. Because the one thing the pandemic has taught us is that students learn different ways and they've been exposed to things that they never thought that they would actually have access to before. So I'd share with you that in the fall of 2021, at Palm Beach State College, we'll give you more choices because we think that's the best way we can meet your needs. So we'll have face-to-face, traditional online, hybrid classes, live remote, as well as web component type courses to ensure that students have options and faculty have different ways to meet their needs.
Finally, what's one takeaway you want to leave for people watching today?
You know, Eric, I've thought about this, and I can't leave you with one, I have to leave you with two. The first thing I'd say is that I'm sad about the fact that it's clear that systems are being used in our country to support racism or divisiveness. And while I'd say to you that maybe it's always been there, it's something about it being so prevalent and open, that's discouraging for me. And so I'm saddened by the idea that right now it looks like, and things that I'd ask people to pay attention to, is how is it that that systems are being used in our country to support divisiveness and failing to recognize the value of diversity and ensuring equity. And so that's one thing I'd ask folks to be aware of and to watch out for, so that we all can play a role in trying to stop that as best that we can. But at the same time, I can say that I'm delighted that the Community Foundation in the county that I live in has decided to be a leader in recognizing the value of diversity, and they're having conversations like this to encourage people to recognize that we're stronger together, and that if we come together as a community and recognize that we haven't always all been treated the same, and that it's okay to reach back and help others, that our county will thrive and be better.
Next to you, Suzanne. You were a panelist at last year's Founders Lunch, which focused on housing inequities in our community. Same thing, let me ask you a series of questions. We would love to hear from you on these. It's a year later. Now, how has the housing landscape changed regarding equity since last year?
Hi, Eric. It's great to be here at this virtual luncheon again this year. Last year at the luncheon, we announced that we were doing a housing needs equity assessment to really better understand the housing crisis in our community. So we were able to conduct that study last year, and although we were expecting gaps, the results we saw were startling. Only 17% of county residents can afford to buy a home at today's prices, and the situation for rental is even worse. The average person in Palm Beach County, 50% of them work in the service sector, and they can reasonably afford about $500 a month in rent. And we all know there's no $500 a month rentals in Palm Beach County. So this means they're living with roommates, living with their parents, living with their children, in some cases homeless. So this is something we really have to address. And we started this work prior to the pandemic, prior to the events of May 2020. So we have a lot more research to do. This is something, the pandemic has left so many people on the edge of disaster, and I think when we see the federal supports go away, a lot of people are gonna go over the cliff, and it's gonna hit minority communities the most.
In what ways is the Housing Leadership Council embracing equity?
That's a great question, Eric, and it's so important to the Housing Leadership Council that we address this. We have started a new project that will look at the equity in historically Black neighborhoods. We know there has been a lot of disparity due to policies that the government has had, but we're actually going to try to measure that in terms of lost equity in dollars and generational wealth. We're going to compare those neighborhoods to other neighborhoods and give people a dollar figure of really how far behind these neighborhoods are. And the other step we're taking is really to do a plan. We're going to work with communities so they can develop a plan, give them the resources they need, help them determine priorities, and articulate that plan in a way where we can bring it to funders and make sure that we start making investments in community. Well, so many neighborhoods were gaining equity in their homes. Traditionally, Black neighborhoods were fighting for equity. So this is so important for us and so important for our work. And it all starts with the community. They know what they need. They know what the priorities should be. We just need to help with supports. We need to help them, as I said, articulate that plan so we can help them get funding. But it all starts with the community. I heard a great quote the other day that really stuck with me. Don't research about us without us. And that's something that we are committed to. We're going to listen and we're going to assist them.
What can we as individuals do to help promote equity in housing?
This is such a good question, and I think the number one thing is educate yourselves. I've been working in housing for over 30 years, but a book I read 2 years ago changed my professional career and changed how I approach my work. I was able to read The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, And that book really explained how we got in the situation we're in today with segregated neighborhoods and lack of equity in neighborhoods. It went through all the policies like redlining that wouldn't let lending occur in some neighborhoods, deed restrictions, which restricted Black homeowners from purchasing in certain neighborhoods. And I drive around and I see it, I see the stats, but finally I understand it. And that was all due to the revelations of this book. So I think it's really important, if you're going to solve a problem, you understand how that problem came about. And if you don't have time to read a book, you can go to our website. The Community Foundation will give them the resources. We have interviews, we have the Cliff Notes, we have articles, we have ways where you can really understand how this situation came about. And along with educating yourselves, I think we have to really listen. We have to sit back and listen and understand and be open and be responsive when we understand how this came about and be involved in creating solutions.
Thank you for that, Suzanne. Final question. What do you see as your future needs?
Our future needs are really going to be extensive. We have a monumental task ahead of us, and it's really going to take a lot of resources to provide the research we need to do and the support for neighborhoods so they can really start to address the issues. Most importantly, it's going to take a group of people that are listening and willing to help. And ways you can help are really simple. If we are supporting a bond issue, we need people to vote for that. If we are fighting for state housing trust funds to bring more resources, that's another important way to help. Investing in social equity funds is a great way to get started. There are so many ways to help, educating yourself, but I think the most important thing we can do is listen and be open to what we hear.
On to you, Mayor Wilson. By the way, it was great to see you out in Pahokee just the other day for the vaccine distribution. Let's do the same thing. Let me ask you a series of questions. Again, our audience would love to hear from you. How is the city of Belgrade helping people from diverse backgrounds access vital programs and resources that embrace equity?
Thank you for that question, Eric. And let me try to answer it this way. We take care of all of our residents in the city of Belgrade, from the haves and the have-nots. But more particularly, we understand that there are a lot of needs in the city of Belgrade. And there are a lot of community-based organizations that are in our community, and we make sure that these organizations provide the needs, from sheltering, financial assistance, you name it. We net them to make sure that they're providing the needs in our community. So that's goal number one for the city of Belgrade, to ensure that they're providing the community needs to our community.
Also, let me ask this. What systems are being put in place that will help them build a foundation for financial growth?
That's an excellent question, Eric. And I will start by saying, we don't want our folks, and that is the people of the city of Belgrade, to be dependent on social services. So we look at the profile of these community-based organizations, and we make sure that they provide the tools of training, financial responsibility, learning how to spend, understanding the difference between the needs and the wants. That's important to us. You can provide all the services you want, but we don't want people to be dependent on those services. So it's important to us that these organizations make sure they're providing the tools and the components to make sure that they're self-sufficient. At the end of the day, we want them to be standalone, not waiting on a handout.
Last question for you, Mayor Wilson. What do you see as your future needs?
Our future needs in the Glades community, in particular Belgrade, jobs, jobs, and jobs. It's important that we continue having employment out there. Our unemployment rate is at a high rate. And we know that in order to survive, we have to have employment out there, as well as making sure we have youth services for our young folks. They're the key leaders for tomorrow, so we have to have things for them to gravitate to. So jobs, as well as youth activities. And last but not least, affordable housing. There's a shortage in the city of Belgrade, as well as in Palm Beach County, of housing. And so we can tackle those three, housing, as well as youth activities, as well as employment, I think we'll conquer the beast. Remember now, Belgrade is one of the most diverse cities in the state of Florida, with a population of 20,000 or less. And so it's important that we, as a community, keep the employment opportunities for these young folks in the near future.
Well, in my introduction, I introduced you as Fabiola, but we all know and love you as simply Fab. So Fab, same thing. A line of questions for you. You've been a leader in diversity and inclusion at the Bank of America. What can you share with our audience today about your approach to diversity and inclusion within the company, and what has worked?
Well, inclusion is at the heart of our story at Bank of America, and our commitment starts really at the top with our board, our CEO, Brian Moynihan, who serves as the chair of our Global Diversity and Inclusion Council. That council provides governance and strategic direction for growing the diverse representation of our workforce and promoting an inclusive workplace. You know, we outline many of our programs in progress in our audited and published Human Capital Management Report, which is available for all of you. I can tell you that our demographics within the company look like our national demographics, including right here in Palm Beach County. Our people represent our community in ethnicity, in gender, and so on.
Thank you for all that you're doing there at Bank of America, Fab. Here, let me ask you this question also. How is the Bank of America helping minorities build self-sufficiency through CDFIs and other financial tools?
We know that homeownership is an incredibly powerful force helping families build wealth over time. So we've tripled our affordable homeownership initiative to $15 billion through 2025 to help individuals and families purchase a home through affordable loans and 2 proprietary grant programs to help prospective buyers with the upfront costs of homeownership, down payment, and closing costs. And last, the one you asked about, Eric, is supporting our CDFIs. These are community development financial institutions. They're lenders that drive access to capital for entrepreneurs in our country when borrowers can't meet their bank thresholds. We didn't have one with the capacity to lend here in Palm Beach County, so we kicked into gear with public, private, and nonprofits coming together to support the establishment of this new entity with tremendous support from the Economic Council and its members. You know, it takes a village, and we're thrilled that the Palm Beach County Black Business Investment Corporation, in which we at Bank of America have the largest investment, received their CDFI certification at the end of last year. They formed Pathway Capital funding, and they're ready to go to work with minority-owned businesses in need of capital to provide technical assistance so they are sustainable for the long term.
Well, you may see a pattern here, Fab. I'm going to ask you in your last question the same thing I've asked our other panelists. What do you see as your future needs?
Well, in Palm Beach County, we have a strong ecosystem of public-private partnerships and enjoy a collaborative working relationship with the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners, the county administrator and her staff, as well as many other municipalities. Moving forward as a community, we're going to need to continue to accelerate these partnerships and look at any and all creative and out-of-the-box ideas and solutions, as well as additional partners to come to the table to see lasting change. Addressing issues of inequities should be important to all businesses, communities, and citizens here in Palm Beach County. And Eric, no one company, you know this, organization, sector can tackle these issues alone. These issues are broad in scale and systemic, but they are also personal and emanate from the heart and mind. We have to work on both to reach that common goal. Change takes time, and it requires corporate, public sector, and private support to move the needle. We're going to use philanthropy, financial investments, human capital, commitment to hiring and creating jobs, and many other resources to make that impact sustainable for our future and the future of our children and grandchildren.
And finally, Daryl Houston. Daryl, let's shift the conversation just slightly to grant making in general. Organizations that consider themselves grant-making institutions tend to invest their resources into what we'll call more well-known and well-resourced nonprofits. Now, not diminishing that great work, of course, but these nonprofits are, let's say, not typically led by African Americans. So I have a two-part question. What are the implications here, and how can we effectively address equity through grant making?
Well, Eric, those are some great questions. But I think, first of all, we have to look at it from the initial approach. I think we as grant makers have been trained and conditioned to look through grant making through a very formal lens. So when we're approaching grant making, we're looking at the organization's infrastructure, we're looking at their board composition, we're looking at their leadership, we're looking at their track record, we're looking at their budget, we're looking at how impactful their program is. And so when you look at those organizations that are high functioning, they have all those pieces in place. And those organizations, unfortunately, are not always led by leaders of African American descent or people of color. The opportunity is there, though. So what we have to do to ensure that the implications of the financial gap does not continue to spread itself, we have to take a step back and understand what the impact and the true opportunity is into grant making. And so that's one thing, the implication of continuing to spread that financial gap between organizations led by people of color, and African American, or those that are not. Then secondly, I do believe that is one of the unfortunate implications. It's really, it implies indirectly distrust. So you have organizations led by African Americans that go through grant processes, and then once again, as funders, as those institutions that manage the resources to allocate out to those nonprofit organizations, we tend to look at these indicators within their applications. Oh man, they don't have a great board. Their budget is fairly small. The impact of the program is not the greatest at the moment. The capacity of their staff is not great. And so that continues to happen over and over, and we say, well, we can't fund you this time around. And then they apply again, and we say, we can't fund you this time around. And so that's where that distrust comes into play, where those opportunities can be avoided if we just take a step back and approach our grant making through a different lens. And so I think about that second question you asked, Eric, being effective grant makers. I think what we first have to understand is the difference between equality and equity. And let me use this for an example. So Eric and Daryl, we both work for the same corporation. So Eric and Daryl have to go to a conference in Orlando. Eric lives in West Palm Beach, and Daryl lives in Key West. The company gives Eric and Daryl the same type of cars, and they give us both half a tank of gas, and we can't put any gas in it ourselves. So when Eric gets in the car to drive to Orlando, he's probably going to make it. Daryl leaves from Key West, he's probably going to get as far as maybe Homestead or Florida City. And so before it was equal because we had the same car and we had the same amount of gas. But then lies the equity issue. I don't have all the resources I need to ensure that I accomplish the task of reaching the actual conference. So when we look at our grant making to be effective, we have to begin to look at supporting and building the capacity of our African American organizations, those organizations that have leaders that are embedded within the community, and not those organizations that are on the outskirts, but those that are embedded in the community, those that have a lived experience in the community. They understand what's happening in the neighborhoods. So we have to build their capacity so they can get to that level of those high functioning organizations. Because what you have to realize is that, Eric, is that those organizations that have the great budgets, have the great board composition, they were once those small organizations. And so in order for us to ensure that this grant-making lens is equitable, we have to continue to support those organizations, build their capacity, build their leadership up, build their program impact up, build their budget infrastructure up, connect them with those donors that are interested in supporting those activities. And lastly, we have to support the overall infrastructure of the organization. And once we begin to do that, and we do that with an intentional lens, then, only then will you see that equity begins to shift for these organizations.
Well said, well said. What is philanthropy's role in assisting the creation of more equitable communities?
Well, Eric, that's another great question. But as we look at our organizations as grant-making institutions, as philanthropic organizations, as funders, all these names fall up under the umbrella of philanthropy. And you see, we all play a critical role in assisting in stemming the tide of inequitable communities and changing that trajectory to equitable communities. Now, what we have to understand is that we have to be very intentional about this process. We have to be laser focused and be mindful that in order for this to happen, there is going to be some temporary discomfort along the way, simply because when you have a mindset of grant making in the traditional sense, you're going to continue to keep those indicators that I talked about earlier in place. You're going to look at those boards. You're going to look at the composition of the staff. You're going to look at the leadership. But what we have to do is take a more inclusive approach and not so narrow-minded in terms of what the organization looks like now, but also what the organization can look like. So when we look at communities, there's two things I think that are very important. One is that we have to continue to support those organizations and build their capacity, something I talked about earlier. These organizations, a lot of times they don't have those social networks that some of the larger organizations have. They don't have the access to professional grant writers that some of the other organizations have. They haven't had those opportunities to show what they can do. And then lastly with that, they have that qualitative story. They have that, they absolutely, but the quantitative side is probably a greater impact against them because they don't have the capacity and the staff available to really track those results that they're doing. So once again, they have those stories, those heartwarming feelings, but many funders continue to look at what are the outcomes, what does the data look like, how are you impacting the lives of the client population that you're serving. So we definitely have to look at that from that standpoint. But then lastly, and definitely not least, our philanthropic organizations, philanthropy really has to understand that in order for us to change the landscape of many of our communities, lower-income communities, we have to invest significant resources in those communities. And if we can continue to focus on those organizations from that lens, I do believe that we will get ourselves on a path to being more inclusive. We will stay away from the traditional way of grant making and move into a more equitable platform that is good for all organizations that are doing the great work within our communities.
Well, that's a wrap for our roundtable discussion, Building Pathways to Equity and Prosperity. I want to thank all of you, our experts, for joining us today. We are all listening, and we're all learning together. For more information, please visit the Community Foundation's Racial Equity Hub at yourcommunityfoundation.org.
Hi, it's me again, Sophia. The big moment has arrived, and I'm so excited! Are you excited too? I've kept you waiting long enough. Are you ready? Our first ever Community Champion Award goes to you, not you. You! Yeah, you! Congratulations!
It's you, it's you, it's you. Congratulations, you are all community champions. There are so many unsung heroes in our communities, and we will get through this pandemic together. What a powerful and inspirational program. I'll send it over to the Community Foundation's new president and CEO, Danita Nias, for closing remarks. Hi, Danita.
Thank you very much, Holly. We want to also thank our donors and sponsors for their support. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today for this important celebratory event. We hope you are inspired to become change makers in our communities. And we leave you with a final performance from the young singers of the Palm Beaches. We want you to imagine all of the positive change we can and will create together. On behalf of everyone at the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin Counties, thank you again and have a great afternoon.